My brother said no room for you on the dream Christmas trip, so I just texted back 2 words. All good. 1 week later, when I vanished from their calls and the internet found my story, my family panicked. They weren't scared for me. They were scared of the world seeing the truth. If you have ever been erased from the perfect family picture, stick around. Their panic did not come from love. My name is Harper Moore, and for the last 7 years, I have made a living by predicting how human beings interact with digital interfaces at Aurora Mosaic Creative Lab. My official title is Senior UX Designer, but my actual job is to smooth out the friction in other people's lives. I anticipate where a user might get frustrated, and I build a bridge over that frustration before they even know it is there. I am good at it. I am efficient, invisible, and accommodating. It is a skill set I did not learn in design school. I learned it at the dinner table of my childhood home. I was sitting at my standing desk, the ergonomic mat cushioning my feet, staring at the high-fidelity prototype for a new mental wellness app we were pitching to a major healthcare provider. The office was quiet, filled only with the hum of expensive servers and the soft clatter of mechanical keyboards. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Seattle sky was a flat, oppressive gray, threatening snow that likely would not stick. I was adjusting the hex code on a calming blue button when my phone vibrated against the birch veneer of the desk. It was a single, short buzz, the kind that usually signals a delivery update or a spam notification. I glanced down. The name on the screen was Dylan. My younger brother usually only texted me when he needed advice on a gift for our mother, or when he wanted me to look over his resume. We had been planning the family Christmas trip to Silver Ridge for 4 months. I had already requested the time off. I had already bought a new set of thermal layers. I picked up the phone, expecting a logistical update about departure times or a request to bring that specific brand of artisanal coffee bean Dad liked. The message was 2 sentences long. No room for you on the cabin trip, maybe next year. I read it once, then I read it again. The words were so simple, so devoid of emotion, that they felt like a syntax error in a line of code. No room. This was a cabin my parents had rented in Colorado, a massive A-frame that slept 14 people according to the listing Mom had sent around in the group chat back in August. There were 4 of us in the immediate family, plus Dylan's wife, Megan, even with the 2 dogs. The math did not add up. I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed and timed out, leaving me looking at the reflection of my own shocked face in the black glass. My heart did not race. Instead, it seemed to stop entirely, a cold vacuum opening up in the center of my chest. I waited for the follow-up text. I waited for the "just kidding" or the "we had to change cabins to a smaller one." Nothing came. The 3 dots that indicate someone is typing never appeared. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to scream. I wanted to type a paragraph outlining the logistics of sleeping bags, of sofas, of the fact that I had spent $3,000 on plane tickets to Denver that were non-refundable. I wanted to ask why I was the one being cut from the roster less than a week before Christmas. But I knew the script. I knew exactly what would happen if I pushed back. I would be the difficult one. I would be the one ruining the holiday spirit. I would be the drama queen. So I swallowed the scream. I typed 2 words. All good. I hit send. My hand was trembling so violently that when I reached for my mouse to go back to work, the cursor skittered across the dual monitors, deleting a navigation bar I had spent 40 minutes perfecting. I sat there, staring at the broken design, breathing in shallow, jagged gasps. 3 minutes later, a notification popped up on my secondary monitor. It was a Facebook alert. Patricia, my mother, had just uploaded a new album. I clicked it. I should not have clicked it, but the masochistic impulse was too strong to resist. The album was titled Silver Ridge Bound, and the cover photo was a masterpiece of curated family joy. They were standing in the driveway of my parents' house in the suburbs. My father, Ron, was wearing his Santa hat, the one with the bells that he only wore when he was in a truly good mood. My mother was holding the leash of Buster, their golden retriever, who looked manic with excitement. And there, In the center was Dylan. He had his arm draped possessively around Megan's shoulders. They were all beaming, their teeth white and straight, their cheeks flushed with the anticipation of a winter wonderland. The caption read, "Our perfect Christmas crew. The car is packed, and we are ready for the mountains. Blessed to have the family together." Family together. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I zoomed in on the photo. My eyes, trained to catch pixel misalignments and spacing errors, began to scan the image for data. I looked at the trunk of the SUV, which was popped open behind them. I saw the skis. I saw the cooler. And then, I saw the detail that made my blood run cold. Tucked behind Megan's legs, partially obscured by the bumper but unmistakably visible, was the large, hard-shell Samsonite suitcase. The blue one. We used to call it the Beast, because it was massive. It was the spare suitcase my parents kept in the attic. It was packed. It was bulging at the seams. That suitcase was large enough to hold a week of clothes for a grown adult. It was large enough to hold my clothes. If there was no room, why were they bringing the spare luggage? If the car was too full for me, how did they fit a 30-inch hard-shell case that was clearly not empty? It sat there in the corner of the frame like a silent, mocking punchline. There was room for an extra 50 pounds of gear. There was room for the dog's oversized bed, which I could see wedged on top. There was room for everything and everyone, except me. The comments were already rolling in. I watched them appear in real time. "Beautiful family. Have a safe drive," wrote Aunt Linda. "So jealous Silver Ridge is a dream. Wish I was there," commented Cousin Sarah. These were the same people who had forgotten to text me on my birthday for the last 4 years. To them, the picture was complete. There was no missing piece. Then, I saw Dylan's reply to Sarah. "Wish some people could make time to join us, but you know how it is, priorities." The air left my lungs. He was not just excluding me, he was rewriting the narrative in real time. He was spinning it. He was making it look like I was the one who had bailed. Like I was the busy, city-dwelling career woman who considered herself too important to descend from her high-rise apartment for a family gathering. He had told me there was no room, and 10 minutes later, he was telling the world I had simply chosen not to come. I felt a physical nausea rise in my throat. I looked around the office. My colleague, Jason, was wearing headphones, bobbing his head to music, completely oblivious that my entire world was collapsing in a Facebook comment section. I scrolled past the comments, and suddenly, the office faded away. I was 10 years old again. It was Christmas Eve. My parents had been invited to a couples-only gala at the country club. It was a prestigious event, very important for my father's networking. They took Dylan because he was the baby, only 6 years old, crying that he could not sleep without Mom. They put him in a tuxedo that matched Dad's. They left me with Mrs. Gable next door. The hotel suite only has one pull-out couch. "Harper," my mother had said, adjusting her pearl earrings, "and you are big enough to be independent. Mrs. Gable has cable TV." I spent that Christmas Eve watching Mrs. Gable knit beige socks while my family slept in a 4-star hotel and ordered room service. The memory shifted. I was 14. My family went to Hawaii for the holidays. They told me the plane tickets were just too expensive that year, that the economy was tight, so they sent me to stay with my best friend's family for a week. I tried to be grateful. I tried to have fun, but when they came back, tan and smiling, I found the ticket stubs in the trash. Dylan had flown first class. Project approved. A sharp ping from Slack pulled me back to the present, snapping the thread of memory. My project manager had tagged me in the main channel. "Harper, the prototype is approved. Client loves the flow. Amazing work on the user journey. This is going to be huge." It was a major win. This project was the biggest of the year. It was going to secure my bonus. It was going to look incredible on my portfolio. I stared at the message. Amazing work. I was competent. I was valued. I was essential to this company. I waited for a second, staring at my phone, half expecting a text from my dad or mom, maybe a generic "safe travels," or even a belated "sorry you cannot make it, we will miss you." Nothing came. Just an automated email from the company HR system reminding me to submit my time off requests for the holidays before the end of the day. I closed my laptop. I could not look at the wellness app anymore. I could not design a path to happiness for a user persona when I felt like I was drowning in dry land. I left the office early. The sky over Seattle had finally made good on its threat. And wet. Heavy snow was beginning to stick to the pavement. By the time I unlocked the door to my apartment in Capitol Hill, the city was turning white. My apartment was quiet. It was a nice place, a one-bedroom with exposed brick and a view of the Space Needle if you craned your neck just right. It was clean, curated, and completely empty. I did not have a tree up. I had been waiting to go to Silver Ridge to celebrate. I had gifts wrapped and sitting on the dining table, waiting to be packed into a suitcase that I would now never use. A cashmere scarf for Mom, a high-end rangefinder for Dad's golf game, a vintage vinyl record for Dylan. I sat on my couch, still in my heavy wool coat, and watched the streetlights flicker on below. The snow swirled in the cones of amber light, beautiful and lonely. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother. "Don't make drama about the trip this time. We just couldn't add another bed. Enjoy your quiet time." "Don't make drama," the phrase echoed in the empty room. I was not screaming. I was not calling them. I was not posting angry rants on social media. I was sitting alone in the dark, wearing my coat inside my own house, and yet, I was already being preemptively accused of ruining things. I opened the Notes app on my phone. My hands were steady now, cold but steady. I started a new list. I did not title it. I just started typing. Age 10, Mrs. Gable's house. Age 14, Hawaii exclusion. Age 18, Dylan's birthday in Vegas. I was told the hotel was 21 plus. College graduation dinner. They forgot to reserve a seat for me, and I had to pull up a folding chair from the waiter's station. My 25th birthday. They combined it with Dylan's promotion party, and the cake said, "Congrats, Dylan." The list grew longer. The white light of the screen illuminated the tears I had not realized were falling. They were hot and angry, tracking through the foundation I had applied that morning to look professional. Why was I always the one trying to fold myself smaller to fit into the cracks of their lives? Why was I always the variable that could be removed to make the equation perfect? I was the extra suitcase. I was the spare tire. I was the thing you brought along only if there was plenty of space, but the first thing you jettisoned when the road got steep. I looked up at the wall calendar hanging in my kitchen. The week of December 25th was marked with a bright red Sharpie. Family trip, Silver Ridge. It looked like a mockery now. The red ink seemed to bleed into the white square. The days were blank and expansive. I had 10 days of vacation time approved. I had a bonus check for $20,000 clearing in my account next week. I had a suitcase that I had not even packed yet. A thought sparked in my mind. It was very quiet, very small, but it burned with the intensity of a magnesium flare. They wanted a perfect Christmas without me. They wanted me to be the invisible daughter who stayed quiet in her apartment, accepted the scraps of affection, and liked their photos on Facebook to keep up appearances. What if I gave them exactly what they wanted? What if, this year, I did not just stay home? What if I disappeared from their plans completely, not just passive-aggressive silence? I mean vanishing, literally, no tracking, no updates, no safety net for them to fall back on when they needed a scapegoat. I looked at the all-good text I had sent Dylan. It was a lie. It was not all good. But as I looked at the snow falling harder outside, burying the city in silence, I realized something. It was about to be. The snow was falling harder now, dusting the ledge of my window in Capitol Hill, but inside my head, the temperature was sweltering. It was the humid, sticky heat of the Caribbean. I was 16 years old again, standing in our living room, watching my father zip up his suitcase. That was the year of the grand Christmas cruise. My parents had talked about it for months. They had brochures fanned out on the coffee table, glossy images of turquoise water and midnight buffets. I had memorized the itinerary. I had even looked up the shore excursions, fantasizing about snorkeling in Cozumel. 2 weeks before departure, my mother sat me down. She had that specific look on her face, a tight, apologetic grimace that did not reach her eyes. It was the look she wore when she was about to deliver bad news that was actually a relief to her. She told me there had been a mix-up with the booking agent. The family suite only had accommodation for 3 people. They had tried. She insisted, wringing her hands theatrically, to get an adjoining room, but the ship was at capacity. Because I was older, 16 and responsible, surely I would understand that Dylan, who was barely 12, could not be left behind. So, I stayed in Seattle. I spent that Christmas heating up frozen lasagna and watching reruns of sitcoms. 10 days later, a postcard arrived in the mail. It was a generic photo of the ship docked in Jamaica. On the back, in my mother's looping, decorative handwriting, it said, "Having a wonderful time. The buffet is endless. Wish you were here." I remember holding that card, feeling the glossy paper against my thumb. Wish you were here. It felt like a joke. It felt like they were laughing at me from 3,000 miles away. If they had wished I was there, they would have booked a room with a pull-out couch. They would have checked the reservation. They would have stayed home. That was the first time I realized that my absence was not an accident. It was a feature of their happiness. 2 years later, the pattern solidified into concrete. I was 18. Dylan was turning 16 for his birthday, which fell right near the holidays. My parents rented a penthouse suite in Las Vegas. I was excited. I had never been to Vegas. I bought a sparkly dress from the clearance rack at the mall, 3 days before the trip. My father cleared his throat at the dinner table. He told me that, upon reflection, Las Vegas was not an appropriate environment for a young woman who was almost legal, but not quite. He said it would be frustrating for me to not be able to enter the casinos or the clubs. He said they were doing me a favor by not dragging me along to a place where I would be bored. I stayed home. I saw the photos later. They went to the store. They went to the massive arcade. They went to family-friendly shows. There was nothing in that trip I could not have done. The only thing that was inappropriate for the trip was me. The memories came in waves, overlapping with the cold silence of my apartment. The sharpest blade, the one that still woke me up at night sometimes, was my college graduation. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in interaction design. It was a big ceremony in the university stadium. I had sent my parents the date 6 months in advance. I had reminded them weekly. When I walked across the stage to accept my diploma, I scanned the crowd. I knew exactly where their seats were supposed to be. I had bought the tickets myself. I looked for my father's bald spot, for my mother's expertly highlighted blonde hair. I saw 3 empty gray folding chairs. I accepted my diploma, shook the dean's hand, and walked off stage with a smile plastered on my face that felt like it was made of cracking plaster. Later, in the parking lot, while other families were hugging and popping confetti cannons, I checked Facebook. There was a check-in from my mother. Napa Valley Vineyards. The caption read, "Celebrating our boy." Dylan just landed a summer internship at a tech startup, so proud of his hustle, wine tasting to celebrate the future. They had skipped my actual college graduation to celebrate my brother getting a temporary, unpaid summer job. I stood there in my heavy black gown, the tassel of my cap blowing in the wind, and I felt like I was dissolving. I was transparent. I did not matter. And then, I heard the rumble of an engine, a beat-up. Rusted red pickup truck pulled up to the curb. Coughing smoke. The window rolled down, and there was Aunt Jo. Josephine is my father's older sister. She is everything he is not. Where he is polished, she is rough around the edges. Where he cares about appearances, she cares about substance. She was wearing a flannel shirt covered in sawdust and a Mariners baseball cap. She hopped out of the truck, marched over to me, and wrapped me in a hug that smelled like engine grease and vanilla. "I told Ron he was an idiot," she said into my hair. "But I am glad he is an idiot, because it means I get you all to myself." She had driven 5 hours from Spokane. In the passenger seat was Uncle Mark, looking sleepy but smiling, and in the back was little Maya, who was only 4 years old at the time. They had brought a homemade apple pie that was still warm, wrapped in tin foil, and a bouquet of sunflowers they had bought from a roadside stand. That night, we did not go to a fancy dinner. We went to their motel room, ordered 3 large pizzas, and sat on the beds, eating straight from the box. That was the beginning of my other life, my real life. Over the years, Joe, Mark, and Maya became my shelter. When I got my first big promotion and my parents ignored the text, Mark called me to ask specifically about the coding languages I was using, even though he did not understand a word of it. When I had my heart broken by a guy I thought was the one, Joe drove over and let me cry on her shoulder for 4 hours while she brushed my hair. Sundays became our ritual. I would drive over to their small, cluttered house. We would eat cold pizza or whatever experimental casserole Joe had burned that week. We would watch black and white movies because Mark loved them. Maya, who was growing up too fast, would make me play shop. I had to be the difficult customer who returned everything, and she would practice her customer service voice. I remembered Christmas when I was 24. I had not been invited home. My mother had called it an oversight with the email invites. But by the time she realized, the guest room was already promised to Megan's parents. I spent that Christmas morning at Joe's kitchen table. I was drinking bad coffee out of a chipped mug. Maya, then 7, was standing behind me. "Hold still, Harper," she had commanded. She was drawing a crown on a piece of yellow construction paper. She taped it together, placed it on my head, and declared me the queen of the kitchen. At that exact moment, my phone had pinged. It was an Instagram notification. My mother had posted a photo of the family mom, dad, Dylan, and Megan wearing matching red and green pajamas, holding mugs of cocoa. Caption: "Family tradition, nothing matters more than us." I looked at the photo. Then I looked at the lopsided paper crown reflecting in the window. "You are better off," Mark had said quietly, watching me stare at the phone. "Am I?" I had asked. "Why am I the only one who has to be better off? Why can't I just be included?" I remembered the conversations I had tried to have with my mother and Dylan over the years. Every time I tried to express how much their exclusion hurt, they twisted it back on me. "You always make everything so dramatic, Harper," my mother would say, sighing as if my feelings were a heavy chore she had to complete. "We just forgot. It is not a conspiracy." "You love playing the victim," Dylan would sneer. "You want us to feel bad because you live in the city and have a different life. Get over yourself." Those phrases, too dramatic, victim, too sensitive, played in my head like a broken record. They were the soundtrack to my 20s. They made me question my own reality. Was I crazy? Was I demanding too much? Was it unreasonable to expect my parents to want to spend a holiday with me? But Joe never let that soundtrack play for long. "You are not asking for too much, kid," she told me once, while we were weeding her garden. "You are asking for a seat at a table that should have your name carved into it. The fact that they keep sanding it off is their sin, not yours." My job at Aurora Mosaic Creative Lab was supposed to be my escape. I made good money. I worked with Fortune 500 clients. I was respected. I had control. But every holiday season was a humiliating test of my resilience. While my colleagues talked about flying home to Ohio or driving down to Oregon to be with their parents, I was the one volunteering for the on-call shifts. I was the one monitoring the Slack channels on Christmas Eve. I told everyone I preferred the quiet, that I was a workaholic. It was a lie. I worked because if I stopped working, I would have to sit in the silence and acknowledge that nobody was waiting for me. I looked around my apartment now. The instant noodles on the counter had gone cold and soggy. The broth had formed a weird film on top. I picked up my phone and dialed Joe on FaceTime. The connection sputtered for a second, and then the screen filled with chaos. "Harper!" Maya screamed. She was 10 now, missing a front tooth and wearing a sweater that looked like it was made of tinsel. "Hi, Bug," I said, forcing a smile. "Look at the tree." She spun the phone around dizzily. The tree was a disaster of mismatched ornaments, popcorn strings, and flashing multicolored lights. It was hideous. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "It looks amazing," I said. Joe's face appeared in the frame. She looked tired. Her hair was graying. pulled back in a messy bun. Don't lie to the child. Harper, it looks like a clown exploded in the living room. Jo grumbled, but her eyes were warm. And this snow, if Mark does not shovel the driveway soon, we are going to be eating canned beans until Easter. She squinted at the screen, bringing the phone closer to her face. You look terrible. What is wrong? Did you not get enough sleep? You have those dark circles again. I took a deep breath. I had not planned to tell her yet. I wanted to process it myself. But seeing her face, the only face that had ever looked at me with unconditional love, broke the dam. Dylan texted me, I said. My voice sounded hollow in the empty apartment. Jo stopped moving. And he said there is no room for me on the cabin trip. He said maybe next year. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Maya had run off to chase the cat, so it was just Jo staring at me through the pixels. I saw her jaw tighten. I saw the flash of anger that she usually reserved for local politics or bad drivers. She did not say, I told you so. She did not say, they are jerks. She did not offer me a platitude. She looked down at her hands for a long moment, then looked back up at me, her gaze piercing through the screen. Harper, she said, her voice low and steady. They have been telling you there is no room for 20 years. They are never going to make room. You keep waiting for them to pull up a chair, but they are never going to do it. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I know. So, Jo continued, leaning in. If they do not have a seat for you, why don't you book your own seat, a better one? I stared at her. What do you mean? I mean, you have the money now. You have the time. Why are you sitting in that apartment waiting for them to give you scraps? Go somewhere. Go somewhere they can't afford. Go somewhere they would hate because they aren't invited. Book my own seat, I whispered. Exactly, Jo said. Stop being the person who was left behind. Be the person who went ahead. She had to go. Then Mark had dropped something loud in the kitchen, but her words stayed with me. They hung in the air of my apartment, vibrating. Stop being the person who was left behind. I looked at the soggy noodles. I looked at the dark window. For my entire life, I had accepted the role they assigned me, the extra, the burden, the afterthought. I had defined myself by their rejection. I had let their no room be the walls of my prison. But Jo was right. I had the money. I had the bonus coming. I was a senior UX designer who solved complex problems for a living. Why couldn't I solve this one? The idea started as a small, cold point of light in my chest. It was frightening. It went against every instinct I had to be good, to be quiet, to wait for permission. But as I sat there, listening to the wind howl outside, the idea began to grow. It accumulated weight like the snow piling up on the windowsill. It was no longer just a defensive thought. It was becoming an offensive strategy. They said there was no room. Fine. I would find a room so magnificent, so distant, and so completely mine that their crowded little cabin would feel like a cage. The first snowflake of the plan had landed. The storm was coming. The email arrived at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before Christmas. I was sitting in the open plan office of Aurora Mosaic, surrounded by the low hum of productivity and the smell of high-end espresso. My noise-canceling headphones were on, playing a loop of ambient rain sounds to drown out the festive chatter of my colleagues. They were all discussing flight delays and turkey recipes. I was trying to focus on a wireframe for a banking app, but my mind kept drifting back to the empty calendar on my wall at home. Then, a notification banner slid across the top of my screen. Subject: Year-End Performance Bonus Stock Grant Allocation. I clicked it, expecting the usual corporate token of appreciation, maybe a few $1,000s, maybe a gift card to a steakhouse. I had to blink twice to make sure I was reading the numbers correctly. Dear Harper, the email began, in recognition of your outstanding leadership on the Helix Health Project and your consistent delivery of high-value UX solutions, we are pleased to award you a year-end performance bonus of $20,000. $20,000. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the breath leaving my lungs in a slow hiss. Below the bonus figure was another paragraph, detailing a significant stock grant that would vest over the next 3 years. But my eyes were glued to that first number. $20,000. I did the math instantly. It was a reflex. When I was 14, the plane ticket to Hawaii that was too expensive had cost $450. When I was 16, the extra bed on the cruise ship would have cost $600. When I was 18, the difference between a standard room and the suite in Vegas was $300 a night. For my entire life, my worth had been calculated in nickels and dimes. I had been told, over and over, that the family budget simply could not stretch to accommodate me. I was the line item that always put them in the red. I was the luxury they could not afford. And now, sitting in my office with a cooling cup of coffee, I was staring at a sum of money that could have paid for every single one of those trips 10 times over. A dark, dry laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was not a happy sound. It was the sound of a realization hitting bone. They had never been too poor to take me. They were just unwilling. And now, ironically, I was likely the richest person in the family. Dylan was drowning in student loans he pretended did not exist, and my parents were leveraged to the hilt to maintain their country club appearance. I could buy the entire cabin they were renting in Silver Ridge. I could buy the car they were driving there. Harper. I looked up. It was Sarah, the junior designer at the desk across from me. She was holding a reindeer mug. "You okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." "No," I said, a strange calmness settling over me. "I just saw a deposit." Sarah laughed, thinking I was joking, and went back to talking about her flight to Ohio. "I am dreading the airport," she sighed. "But gotta get home for the holidays. Are you doing anything? I know you said your family trip was off." "Yeah," I said. "The trip is off. That sucks. So, staycation, Netflix, and takeout." I looked at the screen again. $20,000. "No," I said. The word came out before I had even formed the plan. "No, I am going away." "Oh, where?" "Somewhere cold," I said. "Somewhere quiet." I turned back to my computer. I did not open Expedia or Kayak. Those felt too frantic, too connected to the world of delays and crowded terminals. I opened a browser tab and typed, "Luxury train travel winter." I did not want to fly. I wanted to disappear into the landscape. I wanted to see the world move past me while I stayed still. The search results gave me the Empire Builder. A train route that ran from Seattle all the way to Chicago. Cutting through the heart of the American North, I scrolled through the stops, Whitefish, Glacier National Park, and then I saw a smaller, less popular stop near the border of Montana and Idaho, a place called Frost Peak Station. It sounded like a place where cell service went to die. It was perfect. I opened a map of the area around the station. There were a few generic motels, and then, tucked away near the edge of a national forest reserve, was a link for something called the Ice Lantern Inn. I clicked the link. The website was elegant, dark, and minimalist. "The Ice Lantern Inn," the text read. "For those who seek silence." I clicked on the Rooms tab. There was one suite left for the Christmas week, the Solstice Loft. The photos showed a room with high, vaulted timber ceilings, a private stone fireplace, a king-sized bed piled with faux fur throws, and a copper soaking tub situated right in front of a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking a dense, snow-covered pine forest. It cost $800 a night. 2 weeks ago, I would have hyperventilated at that price. I would have calculated how many weeks of groceries that represented. I looked at the bonus email again. I clicked Book Now. I filled in my information. My fingers were flying across the keyboard, moving faster than my brain could process the rebellion I was committing. I added the Starlight Snowshoe Tour. I added the private chef's tasting menu. I added the in-room massage package. I hit the final confirmation button. "Reservation confirmed. Welcome to the Ice Lantern. Harper." My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. It felt like I was doing something illegal. I was not sitting by the phone waiting for an invite. I was not begging for a fold-out couch. I was buying the castle. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard. The adrenaline was sharp and metallic in my mouth. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the Instagram icon. The instinct to post a screenshot of the booking was strong. I wanted to caption it, "No room, no problem." I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to know. But then I stopped. If I posted it, I was still playing their game. I was still seeking a reaction. I was still asking them to look at me. Real power, I realized, was not in making them jealous. Real power was in making them irrelevant. I closed Instagram. I opened my email client and composed a single new message. To Josephine Morgan. Subject safe. Hey Aunt Jo, I am going away for a few days, heading to Montana on the train. I need to clear my head. If anything happens, you are the only one who knows where I am. I will text you when I get there. Love. Harper. Sent. I had barely put the phone down when it buzzed. It was the family group chat, the one named Morgan Family Christmas Joy. I stared at the notification. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me needed to see the contrast. I opened it. Dylan had sent a photo. They were in the living room of my parents' house. Mom, Dad, Dylan, and Megan. They were all wearing brand new, matching white and silver ski jackets. They looked expensive. They looked happy. They looked complete. The caption read, "Gear check ready to hit the slopes. Some of us really know how to prioritize family. Can't wait for Silver Ridge." Some of us. The insult was so thinly veiled it was practically transparent. He was taking a dig at me. He was implying that I wasn't there because I didn't care enough, because I didn't have my priorities straight. I looked at the photo. I looked at my mother's smile. The way she leaned into Dylan. She looked relieved. Without me there, she didn't have to pretend to be fair. She didn't have to manage the tension. They could just be the unit they always wanted to be. I didn't feel the usual sting of tears. I felt a cold, hard solidification in my gut. It was the feeling of a door locking. I didn't reply. I didn't type, "Have fun." I didn't type, "Nice jackets." I went to the settings of the group chat. I selected mute notifications. Then I went to my mother's Facebook profile. I hovered over the unfollow button. Not unfriend that would cause a nuclear war, but unfollow. It meant her photos, her passive-aggressive status updates. Her curated reality would no longer appear in my feed. I clicked it. The feed refreshed. Her face disappeared, replaced by an ad for noise-canceling headphones. It felt like taking off a corset I had been wearing for 20 years. I could breathe. I left the office at 3 p.m. I walked into my boss's office on the way out. "Hey, Marcus," I said. He looked up from his tablet. "Harper, congrats on the bonus. You earned every penny." "Thanks," I said. "I am taking my vacation days. Starting now, I won't be checking Slack." Marcus raised his eyebrows. He knew me. He knew I was the person who replied to emails at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve. "You are actually unplugging?" he asked. "I am finally doing a real holiday," I said. "I am going to Montana." A genuine smile spread across his face. "About time. Harper, go. Get lost. Seriously." I walked home through the slushy Seattle streets, feeling lighter with every step. Back in my apartment, the packing began. Usually, when I packed for a family trip, it was an exercise in anxiety. I had to pack clothes that were conservative enough for my mother, stylish enough for Megan not to sneer at, and practical enough to sleep on a floor if necessary. I had to pack gifts. I had to pack my happy face. This time, I packed for me. I pulled out my old, battered leather suitcase. Into it went my thickest wool sweaters, the ones that were too bulky for the office but perfect for a cabin. I packed my heavy hiking boots. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out a dust-covered box. Inside was my expensive camera and my sketchbook. I hadn't touched them in years. I used to draw constantly, but Dylan had told me once that art doesn't pay the bills, and my parents had suggested I focus on real skills. I packed them both. Then, I reached for the scarf. It was a long, lumpy, multicolored thing made of cheap acrylic yarn. Maya had knitted it for me last year. It was neon green, bright purple, and orange. It was objectively the ugliest piece of clothing I owned. I remembered giving it to me. She had wrapped it around my neck 3 times, nearly choking me. "I made it thick," she had said, her eyes serious. "So you do not get cold when you are tired of adults." I buried my face in the scratchy wool. It smelled like Joe's house wood smoke and vanilla. I packed it on the very top. I scanned the apartment one last time. The empty table, the walls that usually felt like a sanctuary, but lately had felt like a waiting room. I booked the train ticket on my phone while standing in the hallway. I chose a roomette in the sleeper car, a tiny private cabin with a bed that folded down. Departure King Street Station, 9:45 p.m. It was happening. I called a rideshare. When the car arrived, I locked the door to my apartment. I didn't look back. The ride to King Street Station was a blur of rain-streaked windows and brake lights. The station itself was a cavern of white marble and echoing announcements. It felt different than an airport. It felt timeless. I found the gate for the Empire Builder. The train was massive, a steel snake stretching out into the dark. I showed my ticket to the attendant, a kindly older man with a white mustache. "Sleeper car. Right this way, ma'am," he said, tipping his cap. "Dinner reservations are open if you are hungry." I stepped onto the train. The corridor was narrow, lined with doors. I found mine, room number 4. I slid the door open. It was compact, efficient, and incredibly cozy. 2 wide seats facing each other that would convert into a bed later. A large window, a small table. I sat down and slid the door shut. Latching it, the silence was immediate. Outside the window, the platform was busy with families hugging goodbye, people rushing with bags. I watched them like I was watching a movie. The train gave a lurch, then a smooth, heavy pull. The station began to slide backward. We rolled out of the station, into the tunnel under downtown Seattle, and then emerged by the waterfront. The city lights were sliding by the stadiums, the ferries, the great dark expanse of the Puget Sound. I stood up and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. I thought about the matching jackets. I thought about the "no room" text. I thought about the years I had spent trying to squeeze myself into the frame of their picture. I closed my eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't heading toward a place where I wasn't wanted. I was heading toward a place that didn't even know I existed yet. The train picked up speed, the rhythmic clacking of the wheels on the track sounding like a heartbeat. Tonight, Seattle would sleep. My parents would sleep. Dreaming of their perfect image, Dylan would sleep, confident in his status as the golden child. But I was awake, and I was gone. "Goodbye," I whispered to the reflection in the glass. The city vanished behind us, swallowed by the rain and the night, and the train pushed forward into the dark, carrying me toward the snow. The attendant had come by to turn down my roomette an hour after we left Seattle. The 2 seats slid together and a bunk folded from the ceiling, transforming the tiny cabin into a surprisingly comfortable cocoon. I lay in the bottom bunk, fully dressed, listening to the metallic clack, clack, clack of the wheels. It was a sound I had only ever heard in old movies, a rhythmic, heavy sound that felt like progress. I could not sleep. I was too wired, too aware of the definitive action I had taken. I was a person on a train, heading into the night, alone. After hours of watching the dark, rain-lashed shapes of the Cascade foothills pass by, I gave up on sleep. I swung my legs out and sat on the edge of the bunk. The narrow corridor of the sleeper car was dark, lit only by small blue floor lights. The air smelled of old upholstery, industrial-strength coffee, and a faint hint of bleach. I pulled my laptop from my bag, thinking I could get a jump on some low-priority wireframes. It was the responsible thing to do. I opened it, the bright blue light of my design software flooding the small cabin. I looked at the screen, at the precise, ordered boxes, at the user flows I had designed to guide people from point A to point B with maximum efficiency. Then I looked out the window. The train was climbing now, leaving the rain of the lowlands behind. We were in the mountains, and the landscape had changed. The rain had turned to snow, and it was not the wet, slushy stuff of Seattle. This was serious snow. Thick, dry flakes swirled in the train's headlight. A chaotic, beautiful vortex. The trees outside were no longer bare. Skeletal shapes. They were heavy white sculptures, bowing under the weight of the storm. I closed the laptop. I slid the cover shut with a definitive click. I was not going to work. I was not going to optimize anything. I was not going to be productive. For the next 4 days, I was going to be completely selfishly useless. I was going to detox. I put the laptop back in my bag, pulled on my boots, and grabbed the lumpy, colorful scarf Maya had knitted for me. I wrapped it around my neck. It was scratchy and warm. I slid my cabin door open and stepped out into the narrow hallway. A few other passengers were moving about, other insomniacs or early risers. I saw a mother carrying a sleepy toddler, both of them in matching fleece pajamas. I saw an elderly man shuffling toward the observation car, a paperback novel tucked under his arm. Everyone seemed to be carrying some token of the holiday, a neatly wrapped gift, a poinsettia-patterned bag. I was carrying nothing but my own liberation. I made my way through 3 cars, the connections between them groaning and shifting, to find the dining car. Even at this late hour, it was softly lit and half full. The attendant seated me at a small table for 2, but I was alone. I ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and a cup of black coffee. It felt like the kind of meal a person on the run eats. As I waited, I listened. In the booth behind me, a group of college students, probably in their early 20s, were crowded around a table, their voices low but energetic. "I am just saying," a girl with bright pink hair said, "if I have to take one more candid photo of us all decorating the tree, I am going to lose my mind. My mom literally directs it like a photo shoot." "Okay, now laugh." "No, not like that. Laugh like you love each other." A guy in a beanie across from her snorted. "Dude, that is nothing. My parents sent out a Christmas card with a photoshopped picture of my sister, who is literally backpacking in Thailand. They just pasted her head onto some girl's body in a matching sweater. They said it was easier than explaining her gap year to the family." "It is all about the Instagram perfect Christmas," another girl added. "My family is forcing me to fly home for 36 hours, from Boston to LA, just so I am in the photo on Christmas morning. It cost me $800. I stirred my coffee, a small, bitter smile on my face. These kids were complaining about being too wanted, about the pressure of having to show up for the perfect family photo. I wondered what they would think of my story. I would have killed to be photoshopped into a family picture. The waiter brought my grilled cheese. It was on plain white bread, greasy and perfect. As I bit into it, my phone, which I had placed face down on the table, vibrated. I picked it up. The signal was weak, just 1 bar, but a text had managed to push through. It was from my mother. I opened it, my stomach tightening. "Send a selfie at Grandma's when you get there tomorrow. She wants to see you. Remember to tell her you love the new haircut." I stared at the message. My blood turned to ice. Grandma's. My grandmother, my father's mother, lived in a nursing home just outside Portland. I was supposed to be there. That was the cover story. That was the alibi my parents had created for my absence in Silver Ridge. They were not telling people I had priorities. They were telling people I was doing my duty visiting the one relative they all found too depressing to deal with. I was not just excluded. I was being used as a shield. They were making me the good, responsible one to cover their own tracks. All while Dylan was posting about my bad priorities. They were playing both sides. And the text, "Remember to tell her you love the new haircut." It was a test, a way to confirm I had done what I was told, a way to prove I was playing my part in their lie. A sound escaped my lips. It was not a laugh. It was more like a cough that had given up, a short, sharp, humorless bark. "That bad of a grilled cheese, huh?" I looked up. One of the college students from the next booth was standing by my table. He had a friendly, open face, a scruffy beard, and a beanie pulled down low. He was holding a small, professional-looking camera with a fuzzy microphone attached. I must have looked confused, so he motioned to my phone. "Sorry, I could not help but see you staring at your phone like it just insulted your entire family. I am Liam, by the way. I did not know why I said it. Maybe it was the anonymity of the train. Maybe it was the fact that I was running on zero sleep and a decade of repressed rage. Maybe it was just his non-threatening beanie. My mom, I said, my voice hoarse. She just texted me to make sure I send a picture from my grandmother's nursing home. The one I am supposed to be visiting, the one I am not visiting. Liam raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Okay, that is a plot twist. Where are you visiting instead? Montana, I said. Nice, he said. Escaping the holiday chaos. Sort of, I said. Then, the words just fell out. They said there was no room for me on the family Christmas trip, so I booked my own. The phrase hung in the air. Liam was silent for a second. His vlogger instincts were clearly tingling. His eyes darted from my face to his camera. Wait, for real? He asked. They just told you not to come. Got a text, I said, holding up my phone and then putting it down. 2 sentences. No room for you, maybe next year. Whoa, he said, and he meant it. That is cold, like next level cold. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. Look, this is going to sound weird, but I am a travel vlogger. I make little videos about moments like this, about people and travel. Would you be willing to say that again? I recoiled. What? No, I am not getting on camera. No, he said quickly, holding up his hands. No face, no name, I swear. I would just point the camera at your hands, at the coffee cup, and the snow outside. It is just, they said there was no room for me. That is a really powerful sentence. I think a lot of people would get that. Like, really get it. I looked at him. He seemed sincere, and he was right. It was a good shot. My hands, wrapped around the cheap ceramic mug, my ugly, colorful scarf draped on the table, and outside, the black window reflecting the dining car, punctuated by the mad, swirling dance of the snow. What is it for? I asked. I post on TikTok. Mostly, he said, sounding almost apologetic. Just short clips, moments on the road. It probably will not even get more than 100 views. My followers are mostly just my mom and my cousins. 100 views. My mom and my cousins. That felt safe. Fine, I said. Just the hands and the window. Awesome. He turned on the camera, the little red light blinking. He crouched down, getting the angle right. Okay, whenever you are ready, just say what you said. I took a breath. I looked at my hands. I looked at the black, snowy void outside. They said there was no room for me on the cabin trip, I said. My voice was low, steady, and cold. So I booked my own. Liam held the shot for a few more seconds. The train whistle blew, a long, mournful cry that cut through the night. Perfect, he whispered, standing up and turning the camera off. That was perfect. Thank you. Seriously. He fumbled in his pocket. Can I buy your sandwich? It is okay, I said. It is already paid for. Well, thanks, he smiled, then went back to his booth, where his friends were already asking what that was about. I finished my sandwich in silence, the weight of my grandmother's text settling in. I was not just an exclusion. I was a component in their machine of lies. As I walked back to my roomette, an announcement crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, a quick update from the conductor's cabin. We are getting reports of a significant blizzard ahead. The lines near Frost Peak Station are experiencing heavy snowfall. We are going to continue on, but please be aware that we may be forced to stop at the next service station, Pine Hollow. If the route is deemed unsafe, we will keep you updated. Thank you. Pine Hollow. I had never heard of it. I got back to my cabin, the sense of freedom now tinged with a new anxiety. The storm was not just a backdrop. It was a character. I looked at my phone. The single bar of service was flickering. Fighting for its life, I had to text Joe. I typed quickly. Train might get stuck in a blizzard. We'll be at a place called Pine Hollow if it does. Might lose signal for a new days. Don't worry, I am safe. I hit send. The 3 dots appeared, indicating it was trying. They hung there. Message sending. And then, the bar of service vanished. Message failed to send. I tried again. Nothing. The phone was a brick. The screen switched to no service. I was cut off. The train chugged forward for another hour, moving noticeably slower. The clack, clack, clack of the wheels was muffled, as if the snow was swallowing the sound. Then, the train began to decelerate. The brakes hissed, with a long, final groan. We stopped. I looked out the window. There was nothing. No station, no lights, just an ocean of white. The snow now falling so thick, I could not see more than 10 feet from the train. Another announcement, this one with more static. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. The tracks ahead are blocked. We have been forced to make an unscheduled stop at the Pine Hollow Maintenance Yard. We will be evacuating the train and moving all passengers to the nearby emergency lodge. Please gather your essential belongings and await instructions from your car attendant. Evacuating the train, in the middle of nowhere, in a blizzard, panic, cold and sharp, finally pricked at my defenses. This was not part of the plan. 10 minutes later, we were trudging in a single-file line through snow that was up to my knees, huddled against a wind that stole my breath. The emergency lodge was a long, low-slung building that looked more like a dormitory for railroad workers. Inside, it was chaos, confused passengers, crying children, overwhelmed train staff. They were handing out wool blankets and paper cups of hot cocoa. We have to double up on rooms, a woman with a clipboard announced. Married couples, families, and then we will have to put singles together, find a partner. I stood there, alone in my ugly scarf, a total stranger in a sea of strangers. 5 miles away, or maybe 500, Liam, the vlogger, had found a corner of the lodge with a weak, flickering Wi-Fi signal. It was a guest network, slow as molasses. But it was working. He sat on his suitcase, his camera bag on his lap. He opened his laptop, pulled the tiny SD card from his camera, and slotted it in. He found the clip. 10 seconds long, my hands, the coffee, the snow. He uploaded it to TikTok. He added a simple caption. They said there was no room for her at Christmas, so she took the train into a snowstorm alone. He added a few hashtags, no room for me, Christmas, travel, holiday story. He hit post. He closed his laptop, yawned, and went to find his own cup of hot cocoa. His post already forgotten, vanishing into the digital blizzard. But it did not vanish. Somewhere, an algorithm snagged it. A woman in Ohio, who had been told her new step-siblings needed the guest room, saw it. She liked it. She shared it. A man in Texas, uninvited from his parents' home because they did not approve of his boyfriend, saw it. He commented, "Been there." The hashtag "no room for me" started to trend. People began stitching the video, not with my face, but with their own stories. My family said the tickets were too expensive, but they just bought a new boat. My brother's wife wasn't comfortable with me staying in the house, so I am in a motel. The clip, a tiny 10-second slice of my pain, was multiplying. It was becoming a mirror. It was sparking 1,000 conversations, and I, the source of it all, was completely oblivious. I was in a drafty dormitory, sipping watery hot chocolate from a paper cup, trying to figure out which of the 3 snoring strangers I was assigned to room with was the one I would have to listen to all night. I was anonymous, I was stranded, and unknown to me, I was just about to become the sympathetic, faceless symbol for everyone who had ever been left out in the cold, 500 miles away from the snowed-in railway siding at Pine Hollow. The air inside the Silver Ridge Chalet smelled of expensive pine-scented candles and roasting chestnuts. It was a manufactured scent, curated to match the aesthetic of the room. The fire in the massive stone hearth was crackling perfectly, likely because my brother, Dylan, had spent 10 minutes arranging the logs to ensure the flame height was optimal for the camera lens. He was standing by the mantel, holding a glass of aged bourbon. He was wearing a cable-knit sweater that cost $400, identical in pattern to the one Megan was wearing, though hers was a soft cream color to complement her highlights. "Okay, everyone, look at the fire. Then look back at me and laugh," Dylan directed, his phone mounted on a tripod with a ring light attached. "Natural laugh. Mom, do not force it. Think about how great this year has been." My mother, Patricia, tilted her head back and emitted a practiced, bell-like laugh. My father, Ron, swirled his brandy and smiled the smile of a man who had successfully leveraged his retirement savings to rent a status symbol for a week. "Perfect," Dylan muttered, checking the frame. "Lighting is good. Caption time." He tapped out the text on his screen. "Morgan Christmas tradition. Nothing beats the warmth of family. Blessed Silver Ridge family. First." He did not mention me. My name was not spoken. In the reality they were constructing inside that chalet, I did not exist. I was a variable that had been removed to improve the composition. They moved to the dining table, which was set with gold-rimmed plates and crystal glassware. Megan had insisted on a formal dinner for the first night. She was the picture of the doting daughter-in-law, pouring wine and complimenting my mother's choice of napkins. "This truly is the best way to disconnect," Megan said, slicing into a prime rib. "Just us, no drama, no noise." Her phone, sitting face up on the table next to her wine glass, lit up. It was a notification from Instagram, then another, then a text message. Megan frowned. She usually had strict rules about phones at the table, rules she enforced on everyone but herself. She picked it up, intending to swipe the distraction away, her thumb frozen. The text was from a woman named Jessica, a junior associate in her HR department. Jessica was the kind of person who lived for office gossip and followed every trend on social media. The message was a link, followed by a single line of text. "Isn't this your sister-in-law's sister? The one your mother-in-law said was too dramatic?" "You need to see this." Megan tapped the link. It opened TikTok. The video was simple. A pair of hands wrapped around a cheap diner mug, a dark window streaked with snow, and a voice, my voice, distinct, low, and tired, saying a single sentence. "They said there was no room for me on the cabin trip, so I booked my own." The view count below the video was ticking upward like a stopwatch. 540,000 views. Megan felt the blood drain from her face. She pressed the volume up button by mistake, and my voice echoed through the dining room, cutting through the soft jazz playing on the speakers. "So I booked my own." Dylan looked up from his prime rib. "What is that?" "It is Harper," Megan whispered. She looked at Dylan, her eyes wide with a sudden, sharp panic. "It is a video of Harper, on a train." "What?" Patricia scoffed, reaching for the butter. "Harper is visiting her grandmother. She's probably sitting in a nursing home hallway complaining to herself." "What video?" "No, Patricia," Megan said, her voice trembling. "It is viral. It has 500,000 views." Dylan snatched the phone from her hand. He watched the 10-second clip. He read the caption written by the stranger who had filmed it. They said there was no room for her at Christmas, so she took the train into a snowstorm alone. He scrolled down to the comments. The top comment, with 20,000 likes, read, "Imagine birthing a child and then telling them there is no room for them at Christmas. Trash family." The second comment read, "I did some digging. The audio sounds like a girl from Seattle. Found a Patricia Morgan on Facebook who just posted a photo of a perfect crew in Silver Ridge. Look at the trunk in the photo. There is a giant blue suitcase tucked in the back. They had room. They just didn't want her." Dylan felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. They had found the suitcase. The damn suitcase he had been too lazy to unpack before the photo. "They found Mom's Facebook," Dylan said, his voice rising in pitch. "They are linking this video to us." "What do you mean, linking?" Ron asked, putting down his fork. "We did not do anything wrong. We just did not have a bed." "The internet does not care about bed counts, Dad," Dylan snapped. "They care that we look like monsters. Look at this." He shoved the phone in Ron's face. A user named Justice for Holiday Orphans had stitched the video of my hands with the photo of them in their matching jackets. The caption on the stitched video was brutal. This family is wearing $2,000 worth of matching gear, but couldn't afford a cot for their daughter. The math is not matching. Patricia grabbed her own phone. Her hands were shaking. She opened her Facebook app. Her notification bell was a solid red block. Strangers, hundreds of them, were commenting on her perfect crew photo. Where is your daughter? Patricia, nice jackets. Shame about your soul. Is the dog sleeping in the extra bed you denied your kid? Oh my God. Patricia gasped. She clutched the pearls around her neck. The ladies at the church committee? They are going to see this. Mrs. Higgins is on Facebook all day. She will see this. Forget Mrs. Higgins, Dylan yelled. My boss follows you. Mom, you tagged me in the photo. As if summoned by his fear, Dylan's phone buzzed in his hand. It was a LinkedIn notification, followed immediately by a direct message on Twitter. It was from his boss, a man whose entire personal brand was built on family values and corporate integrity. The message was short, Dylan. Seeing some very disturbing content trending under the hashtag #NoRoomForMe. The timeline aligns with your vacation. Hope this isn't about your family. We have the merger press release in January. We cannot have this kind of noise. Dylan stared at the screen. Noise. That was corporate speak for fix this or you are fired. Call her, Dylan ordered his mother. Call Harper right now. Tell her to take it down. Tell her to tell the guy to take it down. Patricia dialed my number. Her fingers fumbled over the screen. She held the phone to her ear. Her face twisted in a mix of fear and indignation. It is going straight to voicemail, she said. She turned her phone off, that spiteful girl. She did this on purpose. She knew we would be eating dinner. She timed it. She is on a train in a blizzard. Patricia, Megan said, her HR brain starting to whir into damage control mode. She might not have service, or she might be ignoring us. Keep calling, Ron barked. Leave a message. Tell her this is unacceptable. Tell her she is ruining Christmas. Patricia called again, and again, and again, 500 miles away. My phone lay dead in my bag in the Pine Hollow Lodge, completely disconnected from the signal tower buried under 4 feet of snow. I was eating lukewarm tomato soup and listening to a grandmother tell me about her cats. I had no idea that I was trending. I had no idea that the silence from my end was driving them insane. Back at the chalet, the dinner was abandoned. The prime rib went cold, the fat congealing on the plates. We need to get ahead of this, Dylan said. He was pacing the length of the rug, running his hands through his hair, ruining the perfect style he had crafted for the photos. If we stay silent, we look guilty. We need to control the narrative. We can't control it if she won't answer the phone, Patricia wailed. She was scrolling through the comments again, torturing herself. Someone had just posted a screenshot of the Google Street View of their house, pointing out that they had a 4-bedroom home and questioning why I was never in the holiday photos from previous years. I am going to lose the merger account, Dylan said, his voice hollow. I am going to lose my bonus. Megan stood up. She walked over to the window and looked out at the dark, expensive slopes of Silver Ridge. She was watching the snowfall, but she wasn't seeing it. She was seeing a strategy board. Megan worked in human resources for a large tech firm. Her specialty was employee relations, which was a polite term for protecting the company from lawsuits and managing problematic personnel. She knew how to document. She knew how to frame a story so that the victim looked like the aggressor. She knew the buzzwords that made people back off. We do not need her to answer, Megan said quietly. The room went silent. They all looked at her. What do you mean? Ron asked. If Harper is the victim, we are the villains, Megan said. Turning around, the firelight cast sharp shadows across her face. But if Harper is unstable, if Harper is having a mental health episode, then we aren't villains. We are the concerned family trying to manage a difficult relative who has run away. Dylan looked at his wife. He saw the calculation in her eyes. He did not recoil. He leaned in. How do we prove that? Dylan asked. We don't need to prove it to the internet right now, Megan said. We need to prove it to the people who matter, your boss. Her boss, we need to create a paper trail that predates this video. Her boss, Patricia asked, why would we involve her work? Because, Megan said, walking back to the table and picking up her phone. If she is painting us as abusers, we need to discredit the source. If her company thinks she is having a breakdown, they won't trust her narrative. And if she gets fired, well, then she has no resources to keep this fight going. It was a nuclear option. It was cruel. It was the kind of thing you only did to an enemy you wanted to destroy. Do it, Dylan said. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think about the fact that he was talking about his sister. He thought about his merger. He thought about his reputation. Do whatever you have to do. Megan nodded. I am going to draft an email to the HR department at Aurora Mosaic. I can find their contact info on LinkedIn. I will say we are her family. We are deeply worried, and that this video is part of a pattern of erratic behavior. Let's go to the hot tub, Megan added, her voice strangely calm. I think better in the water, and we need to look like we are still holding it together if anyone looks in the windows. It was a grotesque scene. 10 minutes later, the four of them were submerged in the steaming water of the outdoor jacuzzi. The snow was falling on their heads. The jets were bubbling. But instead of relaxing, they were huddled in a circle of blue light, staring at Megan's waterproof phone case. Megan's thumbs flew across the keyboard. She was composing a masterpiece of corporate sabotage. Subject: urgent concern regarding employee Harper Moore. Confidential family matter to the Human Resources Director at Aurora Mosaic. I am writing to you with a heavy heart as the sister-in-law of Harper Moore. Our family is currently in a state of deep distress regarding Harper's recent behavior, which has culminated in a disturbing social media presence that we believe indicates a significant mental health crisis. Harper has a history of perceiving rejection where none exists and engaging in attention-seeking behaviors during high-stress periods, particularly the holidays. The narrative she is currently spinning online that she was kicked out of a family trip is a complete fabrication designed to elicit sympathy. The reality is that we have been trying to support her through some personal struggles, and she chose to cut contact and flee. We are terrified for her safety. We believe she may be a danger to herself or the reputation of those around her. We wanted to alert you, her employer, so that you can be aware that her current public statements may not be tethered to reality. We are not asking for action, only for compassion and vigilance as we try to locate her and get her the help she needs. Sincerely, Megan Morgan, Senior HR Business Partner. Read that back, Dylan said, the steam rising around his face. Megan read it aloud. The words were smooth. They sounded concerned. They sounded professional. They painted me not as a woman who had finally stood up for herself, but as a hysterical, lying patient who needed to be managed. It is good, Patricia said, nodding. It sounds loving. Deep distress. That is good. It protects us, Megan said. If she tries to say anything about us later, we can point to this and say, see, we told you she was unwell. Send it, Dylan said. Megan hit send. The email flew through the digital ether. It bypassed the snowstorm. It bypassed the mountains. It landed, with a soft ding, in the inbox of the HR director at Aurora Mosaic in Seattle, waiting to be opened the next morning. They sat back in the hot tub. The bubbles churned around them. Now, Dylan said, picking up his bourbon which he had set on the ledge of the tub. We wait, and we delete comments. Mom, give me your phone. I am going to scrub your Facebook page until it looks like a nun's diary. They spent the rest of the night in that tub, not talking to each other, just frantically deleting, blocking, and hiding the thousands of voices that were screaming the truth at them. They were 4 people in a luxury chalet, fighting a war against a ghost they had created, and in the silence of the Pine Hollow Lodge, I pulled the scratchy, colorful scarf up to my chin, closed my eyes, and slept the deepest, most peaceful sleep of my life. completely unaware that my family had just tried to burn my life to the ground to save their own skins. The morning light at Pine Hollow Lodge was gray and muted, filtered through windows that were half buried in snowdrifts. I woke up on a cot that smelled faintly of lavender detergent, wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket that felt more comforting than any high-thread couch sheet I had ever slept on. The room was small, repurposed from a staff break room to accommodate the stranded train passengers. I was sharing it with 2 other women. On the cot to my left was Mrs. Gable, no relation to my childhood neighbor. Just a funny coincidence, a widow in her 70s with bright, intelligent eyes and a collection of knitting needles she had somehow smuggled off the train. On the right was Sarah, a pediatric nurse who had been working a double shift and missed the last flight out before the storm, forcing her onto the train to try and reach her sister in Spokane. The storm was still raging outside, a white curtain that erased the world, but inside there was a strange, suspended sense of peace. We were a little island of castaways. There was no schedule here, no deadlines, no perfect family photos to stage. We spent the morning huddled around a small electric radiator, playing Uno with a deck Sarah had in her purse. We ate instant oatmeal made with hot water from a kettle in the hallway. It was humble, but it felt communal in a way I was not used to. As the game progressed, the conversation turned to the topic that hangs over every stranded traveler: where we were supposed to be. I was supposed to be baking cookies with my grandkids, Mrs. Gable said, laying down a draw 4 card with a mischievous smile. But honestly, my daughter-in-law gets so stressed about the icing being perfect that it is not much fun. Sitting here beating you 2 at cards is actually more relaxing. Sarah laughed, rubbing her eyes. I was supposed to be the designated babysitter for my sister's 3 kids, so she and her husband could go to a party. I love my nephews, but I have been awake for 30 hours. This snowstorm is the only reason I'm getting any sleep. Then they looked at me. What about you, Harper? Mrs. Gable asked, where were you headed before you decided to go rogue? I looked at the cards in my hand. Usually, this was the part where I lied, where I made up a story about a busy work schedule or a conflicting flight, but something about the anonymity of the storm, about the way these 2 strangers looked at me without judgment, made the walls come down. I was supposed to be going to a cabin in Colorado with my parents and my brother, I said. I put down a yellow 7. But a week ago, my brother texted me and said there was no room for me. He said maybe next year. Sarah stopped shuffling her cards. He what? He said there was no room, I repeated, my voice steady. But then they posted a photo on Facebook. They brought the giant spare suitcase. They brought the dog's massive bed. They had room. They just didn't want me there. I told them everything. The floodgates opened, and out poured years of no extra bed. I told them about the cruise when I was 16. I told them about the Vegas trip where I was too young. I told them about my graduation. I told them about the matching pajamas I was never asked to wear. I did not make it a joke. I did not add a self-deprecating laugh at the end to make them comfortable. I just laid the facts on the table like playing cards. When I finished, the room was silent. The only sound was the wind howling against the glass. Mrs. Gable reached out and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was paper-thin and warm. Honey, she said, her voice sharp but kind. You do realize that they weren't running out of beds, right? They were actively looking for a bed to remove. Every single year. They found a reason. It wasn't about space. It was about subtraction. The words hit me like a physical blow. It was about subtraction. They were curating the photo, Sarah added, her nurse's eyes full of professional assessment. You don't fit the aesthetic they want, so they edit you out. That is not a family. That is a marketing team. I sat there, staring at the Uno cards, feeling a shift in my chest. For years, I had thought I was the problem, that I was too big, too loud, too needy, that I took up too much space. But Mrs. Gable was right. The space was there. They just kept building walls to keep me out of it. Around noon, The lodge manager announced that the satellite internet was back up. Though spotty, I had almost forgotten about the outside world. I felt a sudden knot of anxiety as I reached for my phone. I turned it on. It vibrated. Then it vibrated again. And again. It danced across the wooden table, buzzing angrily for a full 2 minutes. 30 voicemails, 52 text messages, 14 missed calls from Mom, 10 from Dylan, 8 from Megan. I stared at the screen, terrified. Had someone died? Was the cabin on fire? I did not open them. I could not. Not yet. I stood up, needing air. I am going to get some coffee. I told Mrs. Gable. I walked out into the main lodge area. It was a large, rustic room with a high ceiling and a roaring fireplace. People were scattered around on sofas, reading or napping. In the corner, an old television was mounted on the wall, playing a local news channel that was covering the storm. I was waiting for the coffee urn to fill when I heard it, my own voice. They said there was no room for me on the cabin trip, so I booked my own. I froze. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers and bounced on the rug. I turned slowly toward the television. On the screen, there was a TikTok video playing. It was the video Liam had taken. My hands, the mug, the snow, and the caption. In big bold letters, no. Room for me, the viral story. Breaking hearts this holiday. The news anchor, a woman with perfect hair and a sympathetic expression, was speaking. That video, posted by travel vlogger Liam just 24 hours ago, has amassed over 3 million views. It has sparked a global conversation about toxic family dynamics during the holidays. Thousands of users are sharing their own stories of being excluded, using the hashtag #NoRoomForMe. But who is the mystery woman on the train, and why did her family leave her behind? My heart stopped. 3 million views. Oh no, a voice said behind me. I turned around. Liam was standing there. He looked pale. He was holding his phone, and he looked like he had just seen a ghost. Harper, he stammered. I am so sorry. You said it would get 100 views, I whispered. You said it was for your cousins. I didn't know, he said, running a hand through his hair. The algorithm it grabbed it. It went nuclear overnight. People are finding your family. They are finding everything. My family, I asked, my voice rising. Yeah, Liam said, wincing. Internet sleuths. They found a photo your mom posted. The one with the suitcase. They matched the timeline. Harper. They are tearing them apart in the comments. I tried to delete the video, but people had already screen recorded it. It is everywhere. I can't stop it. I felt dizzy. I looked back at the TV. The anchor was now showing tweets from people supporting me. We stand with the girl on the train. Family is who holds you, not who leaves you. I sank onto a nearby bench. This wasn't part of my plan. I wanted to disappear. I didn't want to be a martyr for the holiday orphans of the world. I am so sorry, Liam said again. I can make a statement. I can say I made it up. No, I said, thinking of Mrs. Gable's words. It was about subtraction. Don't say anything. Just let me think. I pulled out my phone again. My hands were shaking. But this time, not from fear, from a strange, cold clarity. I opened the voicemails. The first one was from my mother. I held the phone to my ear. Harper? Her voice was shrill, panicked. She sounded like she was crying, but not the sad kind of crying, the angry kind. Pick up the phone. Do you have any idea what is happening? People are attacking me on my Facebook. Strangers are calling me a bad mother. Mrs. Higgins from the church sent me a screenshot of that video. Why did you tell that boy? Why did you have to make it sound so pathetic? We just didn't have a bed. You are ruining our reputation. Call me back and fix this. Click, not, are you safe in the storm? Not, we are worried about you. Just, fix this. Just, my reputation. I played the next one. Dylan. Harper, call me now. This is getting out of hand. My boss saw the video. Do you hear me? My boss. I could lose my bonus over this. You need to go on TikTok. You need to make a video showing your face and saying it was a joke. Say you are actually with us. Say you are in the bathroom or something. Just lie. You have to fix this. We are drowning here. Click. I played the next one, Megan, but it wasn't a voicemail. It was an email notification that popped up. Subject documentation of behavioral history. CC Aurora Mosaic HR. My blood ran cold. I opened it. It was a 3-page email. Megan had CC'd the head of HR at my company. The subject line was, "Concern for employee safety, mental health crisis." I read the text. It was a masterpiece of corporate assassination. Harper has displayed a pattern of aggression and self-isolation since childhood. We recall an incident when she was 7 where she refused to let Dylan play with her toys, demonstrating an early inability to share space. She often invents narratives of victimization to garner attention. We believe this current social media stunt is a cry for help from a deeply unstable individual. She was trying to get me fired. She was using her HR language, her professional standing, to paint me as crazy so that no one would believe I was just a woman who had been left behind. She was weaponizing my childhood as 7-year-old not sharing toys to destroy my career. I sat there in the lodge, the snow swirling outside, the fire crackling nearby. I looked at the email. I listened to my mother's screeching voicemail again. I looked at the perfect Christmas crew photo that someone had reposted on Twitter with a red circle around the hidden suitcase. Something broke inside me, or maybe something finally healed. For 20 years, I had tried to explain myself. I had tried to soften the blow. I had apologized for taking up space. I had tried to be the good daughter who didn't make scenes. And what had it gotten me? A cot in a train station and an email trying to diagnose me as mentally ill to my employer. I looked at Liam, who was still hovering anxiously. "It is okay," I said. "It is," he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You didn't start this fire. Liam, you just lit a match in a room full of gasoline they have been pouring for years." I looked down at my phone. I did not hit reply. I did not call my mother back to soothe her. I did not text Dylan to apologize for his boss seeing the truth. I opened my photo gallery. I created a new album. I took a screenshot of Dylan's "No room for you" text. I took a screenshot of the perfect Christmas crew photo with the suitcase visible. I took a screenshot of the voicemail transcription where my mother worried about Mrs. Higgins instead of my safety. I took a screenshot of Megan's email to my HR department. I wasn't going to post them. Not yet. I wasn't going to play their game of public mudslinging. I was going to keep them. I was going to curate them. I was going to build a portfolio of evidence. Mrs. Gable walked up to me, holding a fresh cup of coffee. She looked at my face, then at the phone in my hand. She saw the steel in my eyes. "You okay, dear?" she asked. "No," I said, taking the coffee. "I am not okay, but I am done being the one who fixes it." I looked at the TV screen, where the caption, "No room for me," was still scrolling. They wanted a story, I whispered to myself. Now they have one, and I am not going to edit it for them anymore. I turned off my phone. I slipped it into my pocket. "Mrs. Gable," I said, turning to the old woman, "you said you know how to knit. Do you think you could teach me? I have a lot of time on my hands, and I think I need to make something new." Outside, the storm raged on, burying the tracks, burying the roads, burying the way back to the life I used to have. But inside, for the first time, I felt warm. The train was eventually cleared from the tracks at Pine Hollow, and the passengers were shuttled by bus to the next major station. I managed to get a connection back to Seattle just after Christmas, missing my luxurious booking at the Ice Lantern Inn entirely. I did not care. The 2 days I spent stranded in that lodge, knitting a lumpy, terrible square with Mrs. Gable and listening to Sarah the nurse talk about her life, had done more for me than a $1,000 soaking tub ever could. I walked into the lobby of Aurora Mosaic Creative Lab on the Monday after New Year's. The office was quiet, still in a holiday lull, but my stomach was a knot of cold wires. My vacation was officially over. I had not replied to a single text, email, or voicemail from my family. My phone was a graveyard of their panic. but I had read every word, including the email Megan had sent to my HR department. I knew exactly what was waiting for me. I had barely logged into my computer when the green light on my Slack icon flashed. Sarah Jenkins, HR Director. Hey Harper, welcome back. Can you pop into my office when you have a minute? Just want to touch base. Touch base, the most neutral, terrifying phrase in the corporate world. I grabbed my laptop. I did not bother to take off my coat. I walked across the open-plan office. The few colleagues who were in looked at me, then looked away quickly, pretending to be absorbed in their screens. They knew. The gossip had clearly outpaced my return. I knocked on Sarah's open door. She was the head of HR, a sharp woman in her 40s with a reputation for being data-driven and utterly unflappable. Harper, come in. Close the door, she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. She did not smile, but she did not look angry. She looked analytical. Happy New Year. Sarah, I said, my voice sounding more stable than I felt. You too, she said. Look, I am going to skip the small talk. We received a very detailed email from your sister-in-law, Megan Morgan, while you were on leave. She looked at her monitor. It is quite a document, very emotional. She details a long history of what she terms erratic behavior, self-isolation, and invented narratives. She suggests you are having a mental health crisis and that we should be concerned. I said nothing. I just watched her. Sarah leaned forward, steepling her fingers. Here is my assessment. Harper, the email is long, but it is incredibly short on specifics. It uses a lot of therapeutic language to make accusations without providing a single piece of actionable evidence. It is, frankly, a masterclass in subjective framing, but it doesn't actually allege any professional misconduct. It just paints you as difficult. She paused, then looked me straight in the eye. So, do you want to tell me what is actually going on? This was the moment, the one Megan had counted on, where I would be flustered, emotional, and defensive, where I would prove her right by acting unstable. I did not. I placed my laptop on her desk and opened it. I am a UX designer. Sarah, I said, my voice cold and clear. My job is to analyze user journeys and identify pain points. Megan's email is one version of the user story. I would like to present the data that informs my version. I turned the laptop around. Exhibit A, I said, pulling up the screenshot. This is the text I received from my brother, Dylan, informing me there was no room for me on the trip. As you can see, it is concise and definitive. I clicked to the next slide. Exhibit B. This is the Facebook photo my mother, Patricia, posted 3 minutes later, captioned Our Perfect Christmas Crew. I would like to draw your attention to this item in the corner, a large, spare suitcase, and this item, a large dog bed, both of which, apparently, took precedence over my place in the car. I clicked again. Exhibit C. This is my brother's public comment on that photo, stating, Wish some people could make time to join us priorities. This was posted after he explicitly told me not to come. This is the beginning of their alternate narrative. I clicked again. This time to the audio files of the voicemails. I played 30 seconds of my mother's, attacking me on my Facebook Mrs. Higgins from the church. You are ruining our reputation. I stopped it. I played 30 seconds of Dylan's. My boss saw the video. I could lose my bonus. You need to go on TikTok. Just lie. You have to fix this. As you can see, I said, my voice flat. Their primary concern was not my safety in the blizzard I was trapped in, but the damage to their reputations and finances. And finally, I said, clicking to the last slide. Exhibit D, Megan's email to you. Sarah was silent. She was staring at the screen. I did not contact my family, I said. I did not post about them. I did not name them. I did not share their photos. I told a stranger on a train a single, 10-second truth about my experience. My family, through their own public social media posts, created a body of evidence that the internet then used to connect the dots. Megan's email is not an act of concern. It is a calculated act of professional sabotage intended to discredit me as a witness to their own behavior. I closed the laptop. Sarah Jenkins stared at the black lid for a long time. Then she leaned back in her chair and let out a slow, sharp breath. "My God," she said quietly, "that is what we call DARVO. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender, and your sister-in-law, an HR professional, put it in an email." She shook her head, then looked up at me. Her expression had changed. The analysis was over. "Harper, thank you for being so organized," she said. "From a company perspective, you have violated 0 policies. You are entitled to your private life, and you are not responsible for the internet's reaction to your family's public posts." She started typing. "I am placing a block on Megan Morgan's email address across our entire server. Any further attempts to contact you through corporate channels will be flagged by IT. As for this," she tapped the file icon for Megan's email, "it is being moved to a confidential internal file, along with your evidence, under the heading External Harassment Claim. It will not be part of your performance record." I felt a tightness in my chest that I had been holding for 20 years finally, painfully, uncoil. "One more thing," Sarah added, her face hardening. "We have a 0-tolerance policy for harassment, even from family. If any of your relatives attempt to contact you here or show up at this building, you are to call security immediately. They will be escorted off the premises. Am I clear?" "Yes," I whispered, the word thick with relief. "Thank you. Sarah?" "You have nothing to thank me for," she said. "You just did what 90% of people in this situation fail to do. You brought data, not drama. Now go get a coffee. And Harper, welcome back." I walked out of her office feeling like I had just run a marathon. I was exhausted, but I was upright. The rest of the week was quiet. I dove into my work, the familiar logic of wireframes a welcome balm. My family was silent. The internet storm had moved on to its next target. It felt like an uneasy truce. I should have known it would not last. Aunt Jo had warned me. "When they cannot control you from a distance, they try to control you up close," she had said over the phone. "They will show up. Be ready." She was right. It happened the following Monday. I was at my desk, sketching out a user flow. When my desk phone rang, it was reception. "Harper," said Janine, the receptionist, her voice sounding high and nervous. "If you have a visitor, a Mr. Ron Moore, he says he is your father." The blood in my veins turned to slush. "Tell him I am in a meeting." "Janine," I said, my voice low. "I did," she whispered. "He said he will not leave. He is very loud." "Harper, he is in the main lobby." I stood up. My colleagues were already looking over their monitors. They could smell the confrontation. I walked toward the glass doors of our office and stepped out into the main building lobby. It was a vast, cold space, all marble and glass, designed to impress clients. And there, in the center of it, was my father. He was not wearing his usual polished suit. He looked disheveled. He had not shaved. He was wearing the silver ski jacket he had bought for the trip. He was clutching a large, bright red envelope. "Harper," he boomed when he saw me. His voice echoed in the cavernous room. A security guard tensed near the main desk. "There you are. You have been ignoring your mother's calls. You should not be here." "Dad," I said. I was amazed my voice was working. "This is my workplace." "This is a family matter," he snapped, walking toward me. "You are destroying your mother. She has not stopped crying for a week, all because of you, all because of a stupid, childish TikTok video." He shoved the red envelope at my chest. "You are going to fix this, right now." "Fix what?" I asked, not taking it. "This," he said, shaking it. "It is an apology. We wrote it out for you. All you have to do is sign it. We will take a picture of it, and we will post it in the family group. We will tell everyone it was a misunderstanding, that you were stressed from work, then this can all be over. A pre-written apology, an apology from me to them." "I am not signing anything," I said. "Harper, do not be a fool," he hissed, his face turning a dark, mottled red. "You are tearing this family apart. Do you understand me? You are breaking your mother's heart." He was loud. He was using his angry father voice, The one that used to send me and Dylan scattering. I felt myself shrink. I was 10 years old again. Being yelled at for spilling juice. I took a step back. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to lower your voice," the security guard said, stepping forward. "This is none of your business," Ron roared. "Actually," a new voice said, cutting through the tension like a circular saw. "It is." The main glass doors of the lobby slid open. Aunt Jo stood there. She was wearing her thickest barn coat, the one covered in sawdust. Her gray hair was tucked into her baseball cap. She was holding a large metal thermos of coffee in one hand. She looked magnificent. She walked straight past my father, did not even look at him, and came to my side. "You okay, kid?" she murmured. "I am now," I whispered back. She turned to the security guard, who looked relieved to have an ally. "I am Josephine Morgan," she said, her voice full of authority. "I am here to pick up my niece, that man." She pointed at my father as if he were a piece of trash on the floor. "Is Ron Morgan. He has been harassing my niece for 2 weeks. If he takes one more step toward her, I want you to make sure your security cameras are recording." This is exactly the kind of in-person intimidation we were documenting for the police. My father looked like he had been slapped. "Joe, what the hell are you doing here?" "My job, Ron," she snapped. "The one you were never any good at, protecting the kid you keep throwing away." "Sir," the security guard said, his hand now resting on his belt. "You need to leave the premises. Now." Ron looked at me. He looked at Joe. He looked at the guard. He knew he was beaten. The public shame he was trying to inflict on me had backfired. He threw the red envelope onto the marble floor. "Fine," he spat. "But do not come crying to us when you have no family left. You made your choice." He stormed out, the glass doors sliding shut behind him. The lobby was dead silent. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues watching from the office doors. I looked down at the red envelope on the floor. "Formal apology" was probably written inside in my mother's cursive. I bent down. I picked it up. I looked at Aunt Jo. She just nodded, a small, proud smile on her face. I did not open it. I tore it in half. Then I tore it into quarters. I walked over to the sleek, minimalist trash receptacle by the elevator bank and dropped the pieces inside. From the mezzanine above the lobby, I heard a faint click of a phone camera. Someone had filmed the entire thing, but I did not care. A few hours later, an email from Sarah Jenkins hit my inbox. Subject Incident Report 1-8. "Harper, we have logged the incident from the lobby. A witness from the design team provided a video, which has been attached to the file. Per our policy, Mr. Ron Moore has been formally designated as a non-employee restricted from premises. Any further attempts by him to enter the building will be treated as trespassing. Please let us know if there is anything else you need." I closed the email. Aunt Jo was waiting for me in her rusty red truck when I left work at 5. I climbed in. The cab smelled like coffee and wood smoke. I started to shake. The adrenaline of the day finally drained, leaving me cold and trembling. Jo just put her hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "You did good, kid," she said. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the window, tears finally rolling down my cheeks. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of exhaustion. "It is the first time," I whispered, as she put the truck in gear. "First time for what?" she asked. "The first time I was in a fight in the middle of the lobby," I said, a small, broken laugh escaping my lips. And I was not the only one on my side. The confrontation in the lobby was a turning point. My father's desperate, clumsy attempt at intimidation, and Aunt Jo's sudden, fierce protection had shifted something in the atmosphere. The security footage of me tearing up that red envelope, filmed by a colleague on the mezzanine, had been discreetly handed to Sarah Jenkins in HR. It became another piece of data, another log in the file now labeled external harassment. But the story I had set in motion, or rather, the story that had been pulled from me on that train, was far from over. It had taken on a life of its own. A week later, Liam, the vlogger, emailed me. He had found my professional email address through the Aurora Mosaic website, His message was apologetic, but also excited. Subject: that clip. It's gotten bigger. Hey Harper, if you are the Harper from the train, which I really hope you are, so, things have gotten wild. A popular online talk show. The Daily Discourse. Saw the video. They are doing a whole segment on holiday estrangement and chosen families. They want to use the audio from the clip. They promised. Again, no name, no face, just the audio and the shot of your hands. They are calling the segment, Holiday Orphans, the Power of Saying No. I told them I wouldn't agree unless I got your permission. Let me know. And again, I am still so sorry this blew up. I stared at the email. Holiday Orphans. The phrase was so bleak, so dramatic, and yet it was exactly what I had been. The power of saying no. That was new. I had not said no to them. I had just said, all good. It was my actions after that. My refusal to engage. That had become the no. I replied to Liam. You can give them permission. On one condition, they cannot, under any circumstances, link it back to my family's social media. The audio is the story, not the people. He agreed immediately. The segment aired 2 days later. I watched it on my laptop in my apartment, eating takeout salad. They used my voice, that low, tired sentence, as a lead-in. They said there was no room for me on the cabin trip, so I booked my own. The host, a woman with a kind face, looked directly into the camera. This holiday season, she said, a 10-second audio clip of an anonymous woman on a train summed up the pain of thousands. It is the story of the holiday orphan, the child who is always the extra one, the plus one in their own family. The phrase, no room for you, had, in the strange alchemy of the internet, become a meme. It was no longer just about me. People used it for everything. When a friend's new boyfriend was clearly a bad fit for the group, no room for him. When a company posted a diversity photo that was comically non-diverse, no room. For the rest of us, it became shorthand for toxic exclusion, for being the one left out of the perfect crew. While the internet was turning my pain into a catchphrase, the fallout in my family's real life was accelerating. The private, contained world they had built, where their image was law, was being breached. The first breach was at Dylan's work. He received an email from his own HR department. It was not a casual message from his boss this time. It was a formal summons. Subject: urgent social media conduct. Client feedback. The email requested his presence at a meeting to discuss concerns raised by external partners regarding his publicly accessible social media engagement. Dylan walked into that meeting sweating through his expensive dress shirt. He was met by his boss and the head of HR. On the table was a printed screenshot. It was not from this year. It was from last year. It was a comment Dylan had left on a public post from a college friend. The friend had posted about a chaotic family Christmas. Dylan had commented, "Dude, you gotta learn to curate. My sister is always being dramatic and trying to barge in on our holidays. Sometimes you just gotta tell them, no room, and enjoy the peace." A client, a massive, family-oriented brand that was part of the merger, had seen the viral No Room for Me clip. They had seen the stitched videos with my mother's Facebook page. They had seen Dylan's name tagged, and they had done their own digging. They had found his comment from the previous year. The comment, combined with the current viral story, looked damning. It looked like a pattern. It looked like exactly what it was. "This is not a good look, Dylan," his boss said. His family values persona gone, replaced by cold anger. This no room phrase, it is now directly associated with your name and, by extension, our company. That client is rethinking the merger press release. They do not want their brand anywhere near this noise. Dylan left that meeting with a formal warning on his record and his bonus for the quarter officially suspended, pending reevaluation. The second breach was at my mother's church. Patricia's reputation was built on being the perfect hostess, the perfect wife, the perfect Christian woman. Her social standing was her currency. She went to the weekly women's committee meeting, expecting the usual fawning over her outfit and her contributions. Instead, she was met with a chilling silence. Mrs. Higgins, The matriarch of the committee and the town's biggest gossip did not wait for the coffee to be poured. She looked at my mother over the rim of her glasses. "Patricia," she said, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "We were all so disturbed to see that horrible video online, the one about the poor girl left off the Christmas trip, and then we saw your lovely photos from Silver Ridge." Patricia felt her face flush. "It was a misunderstanding. Betty, you know how children can be. So dramatic." "Is it dramatic?" Mrs. Higgins countered. "To want a place to sleep in your own family's house, I just have to ask. Patricia, because I saw your photo of your perfect Christmas crew, as you called it. It is a beautiful picture. But why was your daughter, Harper, not in it? I seem to recall she has been missing from your holiday photos for many years now." The other women looked down at their napkins. No one was defending her. My mother, for the first time in her adult life, was socially stranded. She was being left out in the one place she felt superior. She was being publicly shamed, not by strangers on the internet, but by her own peers. This combination of professional and social disaster was the catalyst. They were desperate. The fortress was crumbling. My phone rang on a Wednesday night. I was at home, sketching in the notebook I had brought on the train. I did not recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Harper." It was Dylan. His voice was strange. It was low, controlled, and attempting to sound reasonable. It was the voice he used on clients he was trying to calm down. "Dylan," I said. My voice was flat. "Hey, look, I am glad I got you. You have not been answering Mom's calls." "I have been busy," I said. "Yeah, I get it. Work. Listen, Harper, this whole thing, it has gotten completely out of control. You saw the videos, right? It is nuts." "It is," I agreed. "Right." So I was thinking, this has been a huge misunderstanding. From start to finish. We said no room, but we did not mean, no room for you, Harper. We just meant the beds were tricky, and you were obviously stressed from work and took it the wrong way. It is a classic miscommunication. I just listened, my pencil hovering over the paper. He was building a new narrative, a shared lie. "So," he continued, taking a breath, "here's what I think we do. We put out a single, simple statement. You just write a little post, on Facebook or whatever. You say, 'Hey everyone, thanks for the concern. But my trip was a total misunderstanding. I had a huge deadline at work and I just got too stressed and decided to take a solo trip last minute. My family just wanted me to relax.' Something like that. Simple, light. It makes you look like a hard worker. It makes us look like we were supportive. And then all of this just goes away. It all goes back to normal." I sat there in the silence, listening to his proposal. He wanted me to lie. He wanted me to be the firefighter for a blaze he had started. He wanted me to solve his bonus problem and my mother's gossip problem by publicly taking the blame, wrapped in the guise of a misunderstanding. "No," I said. He faltered. "What do you mean, no, Harper? I am trying to help us both fix this." "Dylan," I said, and my voice was so cold it surprised me. "I have a question for you. In the last 14 years, all those times I was left behind, the cruise, Vegas, graduation, all the Christmases I spent at Aunt Joe's, did you ever once write a post saying there had been a misunderstanding? Did you ever tell your friends, 'My sister isn't here because we didn't buy her a ticket'? Did you ever tell Mom to stop saying I was being dramatic?" The silence on his end was heavy. "I did not think so," I said. "You are not asking me to help us, Dylan. You are asking me to put out the fire that is burning down your house, even though you are the one who locked me out and left me in the cold." His reasonable voice vanished. The real Dylan, the angry, entitled one, came roaring to the surface. "You are unbelievable," he spat. "You are still playing the victim, after all of this. Do you have any idea what you have done? You are burning every bridge you have with this family. I am losing clients. Mom is losing her friends. People are looking at us like we are monsters. all because you had to go on a stupid, selfish train trip and cry to a stranger. I let him finish. I let the poison drain out. When he was done, panting slightly into the receiver, I spoke. "Dylan," I said, my voice quiet but sharp as glass. If a single 10-second video about one train trip was enough to burn the entire bridge to the ground, then the bridge was already made of gasoline and paper. It was never a real bridge to begin with. I hung up. I did not block his number. I just hung up. The next day, the final assault came, not from Dylan's anger, but from Megan's helpful manipulation. Another email arrived in my personal inbox. She had clearly accepted that my work email was no longer a viable channel. Subject: a path forward. Thinking like a strategist. Harper, I am reaching out. Not as family, but as one professional woman to another. That was a very emotional call you had with Dylan last night. He is under immense pressure, and I think you are too. This situation has been handled with a lot of emotion, and not enough logic. You are now in a PR crisis. Your personal brand, just as much as ours, is at stake. You are the girl on the train. It is not a sustainable identity if you want to be taken seriously in your career. You need to get ahead of this, and the only way to do that is to pivot the narrative. I have drafted a few suggested responses for you to post. They frame this as a digital misunderstanding and highlight the dangers of online assumptions. This positions you as a thoughtful leader, not a victim. It is the only way to repair the damage and allow us all to go back to normal. Let me know which of the 3 options you prefer, and I can help you workshop it. Best, Megan. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. She was trying to recruit me as a co-conspirator in my own character assassination. Framing it as a career move. I looked at her email. I looked at the 3 neatly bulleted and totally soulless apologies she had drafted for me. I did not reply. I did not delete it. I clicked forward. I typed in the email address for Sarah Jenkins, my HR director. In the subject line, I wrote FYI. Another attempt to involve my workplace in a private family narrative. In the body, I wrote nothing at all. I hit send. An hour later, my phone buzzed with an email from Sarah. Subject: RE/FYI. Harper, thank you for documenting this. This is now a clear pattern of targeted harassment. We are engaging our external legal counsel to send a formal cease and desist letter to Ms. Megan Morgan. It will state that any further contact with you, on any platform, will be pursued as workplace harassment and stalking. You do not need to do anything. You are protected. We will handle it from here. Sarah. I sat back, staring at my screen. I reread Sarah's words. You are protected. We will handle it from here. I thought about all the years I had spent handling it, handling my mother's moods, handling Dylan's jealousy, handling my father's anger. I had been the family's unpaid, unacknowledged firefighter, constantly stamping out the emotional blazes they set, all while trying not to get burned myself. I had been so busy managing their feelings that I never had time to manage my own. I looked at the phone. I looked at the email. For the first time, I realized I did not have to pick up the bucket. I did not have to rush toward the smoke. I could just sit. I could let it burn. It was not my fire. I was not their firefighter, and I was, finally, out of the building. 3 weeks after the snow melted from the sidewalks of Seattle, a long-form essay appeared in The Modern Collective, a highly respected digital magazine focusing on contemporary sociology. The article was titled, "The Empty Chair Redefining Home When You Are Not Invited." I wrote the central interview. I did it anonymously, under the pseudonym Elena, but every word was my own. I sat in my apartment, a cup of peppermint tea in my hand, and scrolled through the published piece. The editors had been careful. There were no names, no mentions of Silver Ridge or Aurora Mosaic, no identifying details that could lead a digital mob back to my family's doorstep. I had insisted on that. I did not want to feed the fire. I wanted to explain the smoke. The illustration they chose was hauntingly beautiful, a watercolor sketch of a woman standing alone at a window, looking out at a vast, swirling snowstorm, while behind her, A warm, crowded dinner table faded into the shadows. The pull quote, bolded in large font, halfway down the page, read, "When they said there was no room for me, I stopped begging for a seat and started building my own table." The article wasn't angry, it wasn't a rant, it was a calm, surgical dissection of what it feels like to be the family extra. I talked about the slow erosion of self-worth that comes from being the afterthought. I talked about the specific pain of the holiday season, when the world demands performative togetherness, and most importantly, I talked about the liberation of finally walking away. The moment I bought that train ticket, I had told the interviewer, I wasn't running away from them. I was running toward myself. I realized that waiting for them to change was a form of self-harm, and I was done hurting myself. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. But it wasn't the chaotic, gossipy energy of TikTok. This was deeper. It was resonant. My anonymous inbox, set up by the magazine, flooded with messages. "I am 50 years old," one email read, "and I still wait by the phone for my mother to invite me. Your story made me realize I can stop waiting. Thank you. I spent every Christmas sleeping on an air mattress while my brothers got the guest rooms," wrote another. "This year, I booked a hotel. My family hates it. I love it. Thank you for validating me." Reading them, I felt a strange sense of alignment. I wasn't just the girl on the train anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was a voice. I had taken the raw, ugly wreckage of my family history and built something sturdy out of it. This newfound clarity bled into my work at Aurora Mosaic. My boss, Marcus, called me into his office on a rainy Tuesday. He had been watching me closely since I returned. He knew about the harassment. He knew about the non-employee restricted status of my father. But instead of treating me like a liability, he looked at me with a new kind of respect. "We are kicking off the discovery phase for the new mental wellness platform. Sanctuary," he said, leaning back in his chair. "It is a big swing for us. We need a lead designer who understands that user experience isn't just about buttons and colors. It is about emotional safety. It is about how a user feels when they are vulnerable." He paused. "I want you to lead it." "Harper." I felt a thrill run through me. "I would love to. Do you have any initial thoughts on the direction?" I didn't have to think. The idea had been brewing in the back of my mind for weeks, born from the chaos of my own notifications. "Yes," I said. "Most wellness apps focus on meditation or tracking moods, but they ignore the external triggers. I want to build a feature set focused on boundaries, tools that help users script difficult conversations, features that let them mute certain dates on their calendar so they don't get overwhelmed by holiday reminders, a panic button that guides them through a grounding exercise when they receive a toxic text." Marcus looked at me, his eyes widening slightly. He nodded slowly. "That is incredibly specific and incredibly necessary. It is the best use of lived experience I have seen in a long time. Run with it." I walked out of his office with a promotion, a raise, and a project that felt like purpose. I was transmuting my pain into a product that could help thousands of people. It was the ultimate reclamation. Meanwhile, the Morgan family was discovering that gravity works differently when you are not the center of the universe. The consequences of their actions were not explosive anymore. They were slow, grinding, and undeniable. Dylan's career took a hit that no amount of charm could fix. The client who had pulled back because of the no-room controversy eventually canceled their contract entirely. They cited misalignment of brand values, but everyone in Dylan's office knew what it meant. He was formally placed on a performance improvement plan. For a man who had glided through life on the Golden Child Express lane, being monitored and graded like a junior associate was a humiliation that ate him alive. He stopped posting on LinkedIn. His hustle narrative collapsed under the weight of his own mediocrity. Megan faced her own reckoning. The cease and desist letter from Aurora Mosaic's legal team had landed on her desk like a bomb. But it wasn't just the legal threat. Word had gotten around her own HR circles. The industry is small. People talk. The rumor spread that Megan Morgan, the compassionate HR leader, had used confidential psychiatric language to try and gaslight her sister-in-law's employer. She wasn't fired, but she was sidelined. She was removed from the Culture and Belonging Committee. She was no longer asked to speak at conferences. Her reputation as the HR saint was stained with the grease of her own manipulation. And Patricia. My mother was left to scream into the void, deprived of her ability to contact me directly, and shamed into silence at her church. She took to the only pulpit she had left vague Facebook status updates. "Some kids forget who changed their diapers," she posted one evening, against a background of weeping willows. "But God knows who is loyal, praying for hardened hearts to soften." In the past, this would have garnered a flurry of "Amen, Patricia" and "So true, hun" comments, but the tide had turned. Underneath the post, a comment appeared from Cousin Sarah, the one who used to ignore my birthdays. "Aunt Patricia," Sarah wrote, "didn't you guys go to Silver Ridge without her? Seems like loyalty goes both ways." Then another comment, from a distant aunt on my father's side, who I hadn't seen in a decade. "Ron's sister Jo told me Harper is doing great. Maybe the problem isn't her heart. Pat, maybe it is your guest list." The family was fracturing. The United Front was gone. People were choosing sides. And for the first time in history, they weren't choosing the perfect crew. Aunt Jo sent me a screenshot of the comments with a simple text. "The cavalry is arriving late, but they are arriving. Want to jump in and say something?" I looked at the screen. I looked at my mother's desperate, passive-aggressive plea for validation. I looked at the relatives finally waking up. I smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph. It was a smile of indifference. "No," I texted back. "I am busy baking cookies with Maya. Let them talk." I put the phone down. I was at Aunt Jo's house. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kitchen was warm and smelled of melted butter and vanilla extract. Maya, now 11 and covered in flour, was trying to shape dough into what she claimed were dinosaurs, though they looked more like lumpy potatoes. "This one is a T-Rex," she declared, holding up a blob. "He is eating the Christmas tree." "Valid artistic choice," I said, sprinkling green sugar on it. I had used a chunk of my bonus check, the money that could have bought my way into the Silver Ridge cabin, to help Jo and Mark fix their front porch. The wood had been rotting for years, but they never had the spare cash to do it right. I hired a contractor, paid for the best cedar planks, and even added a new swing. And then, I bought the lights. Jo had always wanted icicle lights, the fancy kind that looked like dripping water, to hang along the eaves. They were expensive. She deemed them frivolous. I bought 10 boxes. We spent the afternoon stringing them up. Mark was on the ladder, grumbling happily about too much electricity, while Jo directed him from the lawn like an air traffic controller. As the sun began to set, turning the sky a bruised purple, we plugged them in. The house lit up. It wasn't a perfectly curated display. It was chaotic and bright and undeniably joyful. The icicles dripped light. The porch swing glowed. Maya stood next to me, her face upturned, reflecting the sparkle. "It looks like magic," she whispered. Then she turned to me, her expression serious. "Harper." "Yeah, bug." "Why don't you go play with Grandma and Grandpa anymore?" she asked. It was an innocent question, born of a child's simple logic. "Did they put you in timeout?" I looked at her. I thought about how to answer. I could tell her they were toxic. I could tell her they were mean. I could tell her the whole ugly story. But I looked at the lights. I looked at Jo, laughing as she handed Mark a mug of cocoa. I looked at the sturdy new porch I had helped build. "No," I said softly, brushing a smudge of flour off Maya's nose. "I didn't get put in timeout. I just decided that I wanted to play with people who always save me a seat, even if the seat is just an old stool in the kitchen." Maya nodded, accepting this wisdom instantly. "That makes sense. Grandpa's chairs are too fancy anyway. You can't eat cookies on them." "Exactly," I said. "You can't eat cookies on them." I looked back at the house. This was my revenge. It wasn't about making Dylan lose his bonus, though he deserved it. It wasn't about making my mother cry in front of her church friends, though she had earned it. It wasn't about destroying them. It was about this. It was about the fact that they no longer had the power to hurt me because they no longer had access to me. I had taken my happiness, my money, my time, and my love, and I had invested it elsewhere. I had stopped banging on a locked door and built my own house, and as the icicle lights twinkled against the twilight, I realized the most satisfying part of it all. I didn't miss them. I didn't miss the anxiety. I didn't miss the begging. They were still back there, in their perfect, cold chalet. Worried about optics and algorithms and noise, I was here, in the light, and for the first time in my life, there was plenty of room. A year has a way of sanding down the sharp edges of a crisis, but it never fully erases the scar. The following December arrived, and with it, the predictable wave of holiday content. As if on cue, the "No Room for Me" clip resurfaced. It had become, as Liam had emailed me to say, a classic holiday TikTok. News sites ran retrospective articles on the viral moment that started a national conversation about boundaries. Every time it was reposted, the comments section filled up again with people sharing stories of their own struggles, of their own decisions to stay home or book their own tickets. I was, forever, the anonymous girl on the train. This year, however, I was not watching the snow from my apartment in Seattle, waiting for a text that would either invite me or destroy me. I was at Aunt Joe's. I had been here for a week. My project at Aurora Mosaic, the Sanctuary app, had been a resounding success. The Boundary Tools feature I had designed had been praised in tech journals for its innovative approach to user-driven mental health. I was given a promotion and a flexible remote work schedule. So, I had packed a bag and driven my own car to Spokane 2 weeks before Christmas. My plan was simple. I was going to be the holiday operations manager for Joe, Mark, and Maya. I had a spreadsheet. We had a plan for cooking, a schedule for watching old black and white holiday movies, a list of board games to play, and a massive amount of cookie dough to distribute to the neighbors. I was not waiting for an invitation. I was the one sending them. I was sitting on Joe's new front porch, the one I had paid for, wrapped in a blanket and sipping coffee. The icicle lights we had hung were glowing in the gray morning light. I was reading a final project brief on my laptop when an email slid into my inbox. It was from Dylan. My heart did not pound. It did not sink. It just noted. A piece of data had arrived. The subject line was long. A much-needed conversation. From my perspective, my brother, I knew, had never had a perspective that was not a mirror of his own needs. I clicked it. It was not a text. It was not a short, angry voicemail. It was a novel, a rambling, multi-paragraph long attempt at adult conversation. Harper. It has been a full year since this whole mess. A full year, and I have done a lot of thinking. I am not the same person I was last Christmas. That whole video thing, it really opened my eyes to how vicious the internet can be. How strangers can take a single, out-of-context moment and use it to destroy a family. He went on for 4 paragraphs. He described himself as a victim of the digital mob. He explained, in condescending detail, how algorithms work, as if I, a senior UX designer, did not understand them. He talked about his mental health struggles after his bonus was suspended. He talked about how hard it was to see friends look at him differently, as if he were a bad person, which he was not. He never mentioned the cruise. He never mentioned Vegas. He never mentioned the words, "No room for you." Then came the final section, the ask, hidden inside a paragraph about healing. The truth is, Harper, I think we are all victims here. You were manipulated by that vlogger. We were manipulated by the internet. And we all just let it happen. But it is not too late to fix it. We are still a family, I think. If you are willing to be the bigger person, we can end this. You are a good writer. You always have been. If you were to just post something, a short note explaining the misunderstanding, explaining that you were never left behind, but were just going through a hard time and that your words were twisted by the media. If you did that, all of this could finally go back to normal. We could be a family again. For real. I know you can do this. I know you are smart enough to see this is the only logical path forward. Talk soon. Dylan. I read the email. I read it twice. From the living room, I could hear the tinny, out-of-tune sound of a ukulele. Maya was practicing Jingle Bells, badly. From the kitchen, I could smell cinnamon and nutmeg. Joe was baking pies. I looked at Dylan's words. We can all go back to normal. He was still talking about the video. He was still trying to fix the narrative. He had spent a year stewing in his own humiliation, and all he had learned was that he wanted me to be the one to clean it up. A small, sharp pang of sadness hit me. So sudden and clear it almost stole my breath. It was the ancient, familiar grief for the family I wished I had. He had written a 2,000-word email about his own suffering, and not once, not in a single sentence, had he asked the one question that might have mattered. Are you okay? Harper. I closed my laptop. I went inside. The warmth of the kitchen hit me. The smell of baking and love. I sat at the cluttered kitchen table and opened my email on my phone. I hit reply. I typed a single sentence. Dylan, the normal you want to go back to is you all pretending for 14 years that my exclusion was okay. I am not going back there. Ever. I hit send. I turned off my phone. Christmas Eve dinner was loud, messy, and perfect. Mark had successfully deep-fried a turkey without setting the new porch on fire. Joe had made 5 different kinds of pie. Maya had put on a show that involved the ukulele and a long improvised song about her cat. We were sitting at the table, which was covered in cracker crumbs and spilled gravy, arguing about the best Muppet Christmas Carol character. My phone, which I had left on a side table near the kitchen, began to buzz. It was a FaceTime call. The name on the screen flashed. Mom. The table went silent. Aunt Jo looked at me. Her expression was unreadable, but her hand, still holding a forkful of pie, was poised. She was waiting for my lead. It is okay, I said. Put it on the speaker. I picked up the phone. I hit accept. I placed it in the middle of the table, propped up against the gravy boat. My mother's face filled the screen. She was not at home. She was in a room I did not recognize, a generic hotel room. It looked like Ron and Dylan were shadows in the background. She looked tired. She looked angry. She did not say Merry Christmas. She did not say, Hello, Harper. She started, her voice thin and reedy. Do you have any idea how much I have suffered this year because of that video? I looked at the phone. I looked at Joe. I looked at Mark. I looked at Maya, who was watching me with wide, curious eyes. I took a bite of my pie. It was pumpkin. It was delicious. Hello, Mom, I said, my voice calm. Do not hello mom me. Harper, she snapped. I sent you that email from Dylan. He was trying to build a bridge. He was trying to help you fix what you broke, and you sent that horrible reply. I did not think it was horrible, I said, setting my fork down. I thought it was true. True, she shrieked. You want to talk about true. You are the one who ran off on a train and told a stranger you were abandoned. Mom, I said, and my voice cut through her panic. It was cold. It was clear. I am going to stop you. We are not talking about the video. The video was a symptom. We are talking about the disease. I leaned forward. Joe, Mark, and Maya were watching me. They were my audience. They were my jury. And they were my strength. Let's make a list. Mom, I said, like you used to make for groceries. Age 10. I was left at Mrs. Gable's house because there was no room on the pull-out couch. Age 14. I was left home from Hawaii because the tickets were too expensive, but Dylan flew first class. Age 16. I was left home from the cruise because there was no extra bed. You sent me a postcard. Age 18. I was left home from Vegas because I was not the right age. My college graduation. You went to Napa to celebrate Dylan's internship. And then last year, I said, my voice dropping. After a lifetime of being told I was too much, I was finally told there was no room for you on the Christmas trip. You did not call it a mistake. You did not try to fix it. You just told me not to make drama. I looked at the screen, at her shocked, pale face. This was not the first time you told me there was no room for me. Mom, it was just the first time I finally believed you. I let the words sit in the air. And if you are embarrassed, I continued, if Mrs. Higgins at the church looks at you funny, maybe it is not because of my video. Maybe it is because of your choices. Maybe the shame you feel is finally catching up to where it belongs. There was a muffled sound. My father, Ron, grabbed the phone. His face filled the screen, red and furious. That is enough, he roared. Family is family. We are not perfect. No one is. And you are willing to break this entire family. Your only family. Over one stupid holiday you did not get to go on. I did not flinch. I did not look away. I did not break this, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. I just stopped pretending it was not already broken. I am not, I said, going to sleep on the floor of your life anymore just to make you comfortable. I am not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm. What about the child? Patricia screeched from the background. What about Maya? What is she going to think about her grandmother, about her uncle? You are poisoning her against us. I looked at Maya, who had been listening to this entire exchange with the gravity of a judge. Before I could answer, Maya stood up on her chair. She cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled at the phone. I do not care about a stupid grandma, she shouted, her voice piercing. I just need an aunt who keeps her promise to see the fireworks, and Harper is taking me. She sat back down, picked up her fork, and went back to eating her cookie. Out of the mouths of babes. She had answered for every child who had ever been used as a pawn in a game they did not understand. I smiled. It was a real smile. I looked at the phone, at the stunned, silent faces of my father and mother. Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas. Dad, I said. When you are ready to have a conversation about the cruise, or the graduation, or the 14 years of being left behind, and not just about the 10-second video that made you look bad, you know my number. But until then, I said, you can just consider me out of room. I reached forward, and I hit the red end call button. The silence in the room lasted for 1 second. Then Aunt Jo raised her wine glass. To the family, she said, her voice thick with emotion. The one that always has room for one more chair. Here, Mark said, clinking her glass, as if on cue. There was a knock on the front door. It was their neighbor, Mr. Henderson, holding a tin of fruitcake. Come in, Bill, Mark yelled. We are just sitting down for pie. Joe, grab another chair from the kitchen. Joe went and got another chair. There was not a single empty seat at the table. Later that night, we all bundled up and went into the backyard. The small town was putting on a fireworks display in the high school football field. A mile away, we could see them perfectly from Joe's yard. I was wearing the lumpy, multicolored scarf Maya had made for me 2 years ago. It was still scratchy. It was still warm. Maya was holding my hand, jumping up and down as a rocket exploded in a shower of green and gold. That one was a dragon, she screamed. It absolutely was. I agreed. I looked up at the sky, at the beautiful, temporary explosions of light. My phone was inside, sitting on the kitchen counter, face down. I did not know if Dylan was at home, frantically refreshing the no room for me hashtag, wondering if his online reputation would ever recover. I did not know if my parents were sitting in that sad hotel room, blaming me for their own emptiness. And I realized, as a bright red firework burst in the sky, that I did not care. My revenge was complete. It had never been about making them hurt. It had never been about making them pay. My revenge was that they had lost. They had lost their power. They had lost their narrative. They had lost their scapegoat. They were sitting in a room, panicking about the story being told about them. And I was free. I was outside, in the cold, clear air, with people I loved, building a new story, a story where I was not the extra part. I was the foundation. My revenge was that I was, finally, happy, and I had done it without them. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so curious to know where you are all listening from. So drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.